Greetings, crafters. I'm going to show you a really elegant card that we're going to make today. Whether you're an experienced crafter or novice just starting out, I'm going to break it down step by step and show you just how easy it is. For today's card, we are going to be using a selection of dies, all from Spellbinders. We've got the opulent ovals, the A2 bracket borders. These are beautiful, love these. Labels 30. This is going to create our aperture. And the stately circles. Also, in today's card, we're going to be using some stamps from Creative Expressions. This is part of my Stamps to Die For range. This is called Cathedral Lace. It's a beautiful die, and the one we're going to use is the one that matches the labels 30 today. And we're also going to show you a little bit of embossing with the A4 embossing folder that I've designed called Basket Weave. Okay, let's get started. First things first, we're going to start doing some stamping. Now, what I've already done ahead of time is I've trimmed both of my sides here on my black card with the bracket borders, and I've used the lattice design. I decided just to use the insert, not the cutting edge on this though. Okay, and I've wiped it down with an anti-static pad to do our embossing. I'm going to take our Cathedral Lace stamp here, and I'm going to ink it up with the clear Perfect Medium. You want to give it a good tapping all over and coat it. This is a sticky ink, and we're going to do our embossing with it. So I'm just going to randomly stamp this around the card. It's going to create kind of just a little bit of interest in your card making. It's not going to draw your eye away from the main focal element, but it's just going to add a little bit of interest. So each time I'm going to re-ink it and stamp it in a different location. Just give it a good press. Make sure you've made contact. And let's ink it one more time here. It's a nice big stamp, so you don't have to do too many. Let's go right about here. You try not to overlap it if possible, but it's not essential. That should work. Okay, and now let's just set that aside. And I'm going to open up a piece of copy paper and put it underneath me here. Pour my embossing powder on. Now, when I'm using black cardstock, I like to emboss in black. Ordinarily, I'll use a clear, but when you do black, you don't have to worry about little flecks showing. So black on black gives you a really nice, deep look. So let's just pour this on, and we're going to just move it around, covering up all the pieces that we've stamped. We're going to tap it off. And just make sure you've got all of it, and let me tidy this up a little bit. Get this back into the container and put the lid on. There we go. We'll just get rid of that. And we're going to heat emboss this now. This will just take a second. You can see it melting. If you've never done embossing before, it does get warm, so be careful not to get your fingers in the way. Let's move it around this way. You can tell when you've hit it, it changes. You'll get that very, very shiny look to it. The background's coming alive. You can really see it now. Almost finished. There we go. That's looking lovely now. Okay, let me tidy up a little bit of my embossing powder now. Okay, so we've got our background sorted. Just a little bit of a randomness around the background to create some interest. I'm going to cut an aperture now. Using the largest size out of the Labels 30 die, I'm going to tape it into place in the center of this between my two borders. And that looks like it's centered nicely. Just put a little bit top and bottom there, just to hold it into place. Okay, let's get our plates and we'll do some cutting. Oops. Okay. So I've got my base plate. I've got the die with the cutting ridge going downward. I'm going to cover that with the base and run it through the grand caliper. This is a label shape, so one pass should do fine. Ah, beautiful. Now you've also got your leftover piece that you can use for another project if you like. But for today, we're going to be using the aperture, so I'll set this one aside. Put that one back, and we can reuse that. Okay, now, what I'm going to do is add some mounting foam to the back of this now because I want to raise that up. So I've got a few pieces prepared, and we're just going to peel the backing off. And we'll put one from here to here. And let's see, we've got a couple more. Oh, here's one we'll use. That should go from there to there. And maybe a couple little pieces here in the corners. Let's do that. We'll trim one up. Put some here. So if you're doing this at home, you can take more time and add the mounting foam all around here to give it some really nice support. There we go. So I've gone ahead and I have stamped the same exact stamp, but I've embossed it in white this time. Tidy it up a little bit. So you can see that it's completely embossed. There we go. We can catch a little bit of that right there. It does create a nice little background when we get the card finished, but the white on the pale pink is a little bit light. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to center this over that so it shows through my aperture. Now you could stamp this directly onto your background piece, but I find doing it this way is a little bit of a cheat, and I'll tell you why. If you're off at all, then it's not going to be even. So if you have a piece the same color as your background, but you can just tape it on top of that, then it doesn't matter where you've stamped it. I find I'm not very straight when I do my stamping, so it's kind of a necessity for me. Okay, so now I just want to layer this over, line that up with my aperture, and then I can use a little bit of mounting or Scotch tape here, and I'll tape it into place, and we'll get our background sorted. I've already done a little bit of a matting and layering here with my coconut white double matte, and then I've got a pale blush matte on top of that. So we'll put this right in place, and then you'll find it's difficult to tell whether I've stamped directly onto that or onto the piece there. So it's a good little tip. Set that aside for the moment. Now, I have already gone ahead and cut the circle that I'm going to be using out of the stately circles, because what I want to show you was how to emboss the center without embossing the edge. Using the basket weave, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up. I'm going to lay this die so that the flat side is on my folder. I'm going to cover it with my tan mat, and I'm going to add a couple of pieces of cardstock. These are coconut white, and they're about 225 GSM. I'm going to put my base plate underneath the end here. I'm going to leave this open. It's a little awkward because of the size, but easy to do. And then I'm going to cover it with my raspberry plate. Okay? So then you have to just pick it up, feed it through your grand caliper. And here's the tricky part. You just need to not force it. So if you've got too much cardstock in there, you can tell it won't turn easily. You'll have to take it back out, take out a piece. If it goes through too easily, you'll have to add a piece of cardstock. This feels good. I think we have hit just about the right combination there with the two pieces. We'll pop that through, and let's see what we've got. There we go. I'll set this all to the side. And you can see I've embossed the center of that for a little extra detail. And let's just take and pop that out. And you can tell the outside edge of that has not been embossed because it's left that cut area and the void from that. So we've got a beautiful embossed center there. So I'm going to put a little bit of mounting foam on that, and we'll start to work on our focal element in the center of our aperture. So starting with this in the background, I'm going to pop that into place. There we go. I went ahead and cut one of the smaller pieces out of black card from the opulent ovals. So I'll go ahead and put that one in next, right in the center. And I've gone ahead and cut the very center piece of the opulent ovals with my sentiment. Just going to do a little bit of light inking. I've got some sponge sugar, and I'll tell you one of the things I like to do is I'll take a little piece of cut and dry foam and I'll just trim the edge at a bevel, and I find you get a really soft look that way. Sometimes if you're heavy-handed and you tend to pick up lines with your cut and dry foam, that's a good tip. It helps eliminate that problem. So we'll just do a tiny bit of inking. Now this is still taped into place, but you want to make sure that your tape isn't going into where your die cut is, or it will create a void in your inking. And it doesn't even look like you do very much there, but it does show up really, really nicely. So you can see, just got a tiny bit of pink around there. Now for this one, it's got this little top and bottom piece, and I personally just like to nip that away. I think it gives it a little bit of a cleaner look. Personal preference, you can do it any way you like, but I like that. So I'm going to put a little piece of mounting foam on that, and we'll finish off our card, and I'm going to show you how to make some gorgeous flowers. So this will go right in the center here. Set that to the side. Now, one of the things I love to do is I love ribbons. I'm absolutely nuts about ribbon of all type, and I use it a lot on my cards. So this is the Silky Crush ribbon, and when I've tied a bow, I find I'll trim off ends and things like that, and I have a lot of these little leftover pieces. So I've come up with a really cool way to make flowers for your card and use these little leftover bits. You're just going to take your scissors and you're going to cut it into an approximate circle. We're not talking perfect, just an approximate circle. And then what you're going to do is hold it into place. You can use either, tweezers or anything you like. Just hold it. Get your heat tool warmed up. So you want to do a little bit of preheating with it, so shall I say. And when it's been going for a few seconds, you're going to take it down to your flower until the edges start to melt. It'll take a second. You won't think much is going to happen, but then you'll watch it and it'll start to go. There we are. And you can see it just starting to melt. And if it flies up like that, you can hold it down with your pokey tool and you can melt that and get it to crinkle. And then just I like to do it like this so I don't get too much heat at any one time. In and out, just like that. Until I've gotten it to the exact size that I want. Okay, open that one up. And we're going to leave that. And even if it bends like that, it's still perfectly fine. I'll tell you what we're going to do. I'm going to bring our mat over here, and I'm going to use a little teeny glue dot here in the center of it. All right, just hold that into place, and then we're going to do one more piece for it. Let's cut one more, and we'll make that a little bit smaller. There we go. And we'll do a top piece for our flower. I like to do it in at least 2 pieces. Now the heat tool is hot, so this one will start faster. There we go. And you can see it spinning around, moving, melting. There. Really taking shape. There we go, I like that. Give it a second to cool down, and then we'll put this into that glue dot on the first one. So now we've created a flower, and to finish that off, what we're going to do is we're going to add a little flat back pearl to it. So with our Cosmic Shimmer glue, put a little bit of glue right there, and let's use some scissors here. I can seat a pearl right into the center of that, and we end up with a gorgeous flower. The really nice thing about these flowers is they're flat, so when you're posting your cards, you don't have to pay for extra postage either. So let's add those onto our card, and we'll do just like a little bit of a cascade with them. I like to use the glue dots, and I've done a few ahead of time, so I've got a couple here we can play with. And I'm just going to dot them into place. And we'll just kind of cascade it up the top of the card here. Like that. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add just a tiny piece of black tulle because I think that makes it interesting. Just gives you something kind of fun to look at. I'm going to put that into the bottom corner along with a seam binding bow that I've tied from the flesh colored seam binding. We'll seat that on top of that. Just gives it a little more interest. And how about one last tiny little flower right on top, covering up that knot. There we go. So you can fiddle around with that, but you've got a gorgeous card that anybody could make. Very, very simple to do. Break it down step by step, easy peasy.